Hey, it's Ayla, and this is not that kind of CEO. If you're a mom running a business and you keep looking at other people's productivity, wondering why you can't seem to make it work the same way, stay with me for this one. In today's episode, I'm talking with Jenn Fast, and she is so amazing. What we talked about mostly is that we see so many women trying to model themselves after CEOs that they've never actually seen up close. The early mornings, the packed calendars, the discipline, the boundaries. On paper, it all looks impressive, but what we don't talk about nearly enough is what's happening behind the scenes in the lives of these persons that makes that level of performance possible. And also, of course, what happens when it isn't. So, in this episode, we're pulling apart what really separates the executive who thrive from the ones who burn out hard. Not in theory, but in real life. What they protect obsessively, what they outsource without guilt, and what wrecks their health, focus, and nervous system when it goes unchecked. There is a moment in this conversation that I'm so excited for you to hear because we name something that mompreneurs trip over constantly, especially women who are smart and capable and are used to holding it all together. And once you hear it, it explains so much about why copying high level productivity habits keep backfiring for you. We get real about stress, about boundaries, about the physical signs that your body sends when you've been pushing your limits for far too long. So, if that's something you're wondering about for yourself, absolutely listen to this episode because we get real up and close and we share it all. So, if you've ever thought, why does this feel so much harder for me than it should? This conversation with Jenn Fast might actually answer that in a way that you weren't expecting it. Hi, I'm Ayla, and I am not that kind of CEO. You won't find me in a fancy corner office, but rather in a quiet corner of my home. I followed a bold vision and built my life and business around it. That's how I ended up in France, where I'm raising two little girls, renovate our 500-year-old castle together with my husband, run a coaching business, and still have space to breathe. After a decade of helping women simplify their business to make room for what matters most, I created this show to help you do the same. Let's build your business around the life you love. Welcome to Not That Kind of CEO. Today's guest is one of those women who make you do a double take because she is so pretty, she genuinely looks AI generated. But don't get it twisted. Behind the face is a brain that has been running rooms most of us never see. Jenn Fast spent nearly 30 years supporting C-suite executive in biotech. She was the woman behind the woman or the man managing pressure, chaos, decision making, and expectations at the highest level. For the last decade, she's also been known as a productivity expert because when your job is to keep executives functional, you learn very quickly what works and what's complete bullshit. A few months ago, she walked away from all of it, burned out, done, and she stepped fully into motherhood while building her own business, Productive AF, a brand focused on productivity for entrepreneurs, especially women, that actually accommodates neurodivergence, multiple roles, perimenopause, and real life. Jenn is neurodivergent herself, raising two neurodivergent daughters as well, navigating perimenopause, and unlearning everything hustle culture told her productivity was supposed to look like. What I do love about her perspective is this. She has seen how powerful people operate up close. She knows what makes them effective, and she also knows what breaks them. So today we're talking about what C-suite leaders actually do different, what's worth borrowing, what's absolutely not worth borrowing, and how we translate those lessons into a life that includes kids, hormones, nervous systems, and zero interest in burning ourselves out to prove a point. That's you, Jenn.
Well said, you get me.
Yes. I realize I misspoke because I said what I actually do love about her perspective. And I was like, that sounds like there's something I don't love. But that was just me misspeaking. So sorry about that.
That's fair.
You have spent a lot of time with these people, supporting them. And that's something that gets overlooked a lot, I think, that these people have a much harder job without people like you supporting them. I always think that when we think about entrepreneurs, we tend to want to compare ourselves with the C suite level. How do we say this? I mean, my show is called Not That Kind of CEO because we are CEOs of our own companies. We're just not the kind that you have supported for so long. That's
Yeah.
different type of CEO. So what's the biggest misconception you think that entrepreneurs have when they look up to these people and are like, want to be just like them?
That is a great question. And I think you hit the nail on the head early when you said, we're not like other CEOs or C
Mm.
suite executives like the ones that I supported. They have a lot of help in the background to help them look good. People like executive assistants, but the rest of their staff, they often have supportive spouses at home who don't work themselves. That's been a common denominator that I've seen. So it's a lot easier to focus on your career and your success and put in the time that's required when there's someone else taking care of everything else behind the scenes, right? But I'd also say the other misconception is that it only has to look one way, right? It looks the way we picture someone in a corner office with a suit on, looking perfect. There are many ways to be a CEO, as you very well know and exemplify. And it doesn't have to look the same way all the time for everyone.
Luckily, it doesn't. When you look at those high level executives, they there are the ones that absolutely thrive, and there are also ones that do burn out in the end. The ones who don't burn out, who actually thrive in it, what are they? Are they like protecting at all costs? Is it time, energy, focus, identity? Is there anything specific that you've seen that they're like, no, I need to put a boundary around this very strictly in order to be able to be successful?
Absolutely. I think it's much more common to see someone who doesn't have good boundaries in place and who need a gatekeeper, like I was for them. The people who thrive better are the ones who do have strong boundaries in place. And where they need to place those boundaries depends very much on how they were, their executive function skills, and the situation that they're in. Very commonly, the place to start is your calendar and blocking out times that you should hold sacred, like your personal family time. But also, I see very common folks forget to block out time to care for themselves, whether that's to eat a meal or do a workout or take a walking break or a walking meeting. Those are the places that we usually start when we work with someone like that, and that they do differently than other people. They also have what I call a "I will not do" list. A lot of people have a to-do list. They have a not do list.
Yep, to
And so
don't.
they have yes, they have determined ahead of time, I don't take certain meetings or I don't take meetings during these hours. You're not gonna waste my time with phone calls unless I know who it is and why they're calling, or you don't put a meeting on my calendar unless they've specifically given you an agenda and a reason for that meeting. So those are some common things I see with people who do better in executive roles for sure.
Yeah, and it's funny because you and I both are in the same niche where we help mompreneurs create a successful business for themselves. I have been a VA for over a decade, and also
Mhm.
before that, like you, supporting important people in important roles, like directly supporting them. So I guess that we both know a lot about productivity and stuff like this. And what always strikes me the most is that we are not preaching new information, like calendar blocking, making sure you take time for yourself. It's you can Google it. Like this is if you Google like I need a better balance in my life, then this stuff comes up. And yet,
Mhm.
and there is always that and yet we it's like we can't as we're like the mompreneurs that we are, solopreneurs very often. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that we can't just sort of copy paste that into our businesses and our lives?
Yeah, that is a great question. I'm sure it's different for everyone, but some things that I see commonly is not understanding that the same rules apply to us as well. For some reason, there's this disconnect. But I also think as moms and as entrepreneurs, we have a certain mindset, and it usually starts with taking care of other people, our children, our husbands, the people that we work for, that you don't kind of go into this line of work unless that's your default setting to take care of other people. But again, you forget to do that for yourself. You forget you can't pour from an empty cup. And so you will be a better caretaker if you're taking care of yourself as well. I'd like to think we're generous people who like to give more than we receive, but sometimes we need that reminder that we need to receive love and care too. What has your experience been with that? I'd love to hear.
Well, it's a work in progress, Jen. It's something that I'm very much struggling with. And I think you hit the nail right on the head. Right at the beginning, you said when I asked, what do they do? The first thing you said was like they have help in the background. And I think that that's what happens for us mompreneurs is we are both like the CEO and the help in the background. We're
Yes,
operating on those two levels. So, yeah, for me, my husband is always scolding me to go sit down. Like, why don't you ever sit down? I'm busy. I'm doing stuff. And it's something I've been learning this year maybe to really sit down and not sit down and then scroll on social media, but actually sit down with a cup of tea and genuinely land in your body. That's something that helps me a lot is to be aware of my body. As funny as that sounds, but I tend to keep going here. This always keeps running. And I think that that's a curse for entrepreneurs as well. It's like the little entrepreneurial machine never stops thinking. You always have plenty of ideas. Everything keeps running. And I think that's for me, that's the biggest challenge is to actually sit down and then switch this off and switch the rest of my body on and just go, oh, I exist now.
absolutely. And I wonder too, how much does guilt play a role in that? That if we're sitting instead of doing something, then we're being lazy instead of looking at as rest is a strategy that you need to incorporate in your day so that you can keep going and recharge those batteries.
Yeah, exactly. Just this week, I recorded an episode on coping mechanisms. And very often, women in general, mompreneurs specifically, we have like being busy as a coping mechanism because otherwise the guilt creeps in. And instead of dealing with that, we'd rather disguise it as being useful and being productive and keep going instead of sitting in that guilt and saying, you know what, I do have that dual role of being the help in the background and being the CEO at the same time. And in order to keep that up, I deserve some rest. So, yeah, that's definitely one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You relatively recently, stepped out of your corporate job and started for yourself. What what were the earliest signs that you were like, "Oh, I can't do this anymore. I've had enough."
Absolutely. Yeah. There were certainly signs. And of course, hindsight is 2020. When you look back, you realize, oh,
Mm.
those were all signs that I was ignoring. I think, especially in this last year, I kind of experienced I was really great for once, and last November started planning my 2025 and kind of made my list of this is what I want to accomplish in my corporate career, but also my entrepreneurial side. I finally wanted to make some progress on that over the years. And then my health also played a big role in that. I was 60 pounds overweight. My blood work was coming back as, high cholesterol, lots of problems. And I realized that I'm not going to be able to do anything if I don't get some help and turn some things around. And so I did the crazy thing a lot of us moms forget to do is I just started prioritizing myself. Luckily, my daughters are old enough now that they're pretty self-sufficient. My youngest is 15, almost 15. And so I was able to finally say, okay, I'll let her take care of herself more. I need to focus on myself. So I kind of assembled a team of doctors and specialists finally. I
Good.
went to yeah, a weight loss entered a weight loss program with a doctor in charge of that, and she set me up with a sleep study and hormone tests and, a dietitian who could advise me on nutrition, and I just started really taking their advice seriously. Since I was paying them all, I might as well, right?
Yeah.
The biggest part of it, though, that I definitely did not have control over was my stress levels.
Mm.
This is something we help other executives manage all the time by being a gatekeeper, but I was not doing it well myself. And it only through therapy did I realize what role my lack of stress management was playing on my actual health. It can actually damage your body to sit in stress month after month and year after year. And so when I started working on ways to manage stress, and one of them in my corporate career was setting boundaries. Setting those boundaries and starting to enforce them with my team started to cause some conflict or
Mm.
some little microaggressions or just things that I picked up on as, oh, they're not responding really supportively to that. And I just grew more and more dissatisfied with a system that rewards you for not taking care of yourself and for burning out and doing too much and putting in too much time, and realized, gosh, if I were able to make some progress on my entrepreneur goals and I had control over my own time and how I spend it, I would be so much more stress free and I would be able to tackle all these other things in my life. So things kind of hit a boiling point at the end of August this year. It's never just one thing, it's usually things building up and building up. There was a last straw moment in my corporate job that had me spending the weekend of Labor Day weekend, ironically, Labor Day here in the United States, the time to recognize the plight of the working.
Yeah.
I spent that whole weekend though thinking, why am I doing this? Like, this is not fun anymore. And I'm not making progress in my career. I'm not having a good time. I spent a lot of time talking with my family, my husband and my daughters, about what I could do instead. I didn't realize that we were going to be in a position where I could just quit my job and walk away. That seemed impossible, right? And most of us are in situations where you just can't do that logistically, financially, it doesn't work. But after working for 30 years and helping my husband build a business that fortunately is doing very well, we sat down and he just asked me, "Why can't you just quit? Why not just walk away?"
What did you come up with when he asked that?
I assumed that because I had some debt, student loan debt, some credit cards, some things, and I didn't really have a clear picture of how well his business was doing. I just assumed we wouldn't do well with just one income. But the more we talked, the more we realized that we were both aligned on the fact that I've never had the opportunity to be a stay-at-home mom in my whole career. I never took longer than 2 weeks off, even for maternity leave. And so yeah, absolutely. And so I realized I would be great to be here full time for my daughter, especially during her critical high school years, and to
Yeah.
be here full time for my husband, and to be able to take care of our home and make it the way that I want to. And then also, of course, build a business on the
Yeah.
side.
And so
Um,
and then, like most of us, you became the help in the background and the CEO at the same time.
of course, yes. But the great thing about being the CEO of your own business and your own life is you determine how you spend your time and you can
Exactly.
set boundaries and there aren't consequences for that,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love how it came together. How you were like when you're setting boundaries and you notice that they're not responding well to it. I think, especially after such a time, it would be easy to say, okay, okay, maybe I was too strict. I'm gonna let those boundaries go again but you were like, no, 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 my health goes first. These are my boundaries because otherwise, like, this is not working. And well, to hell with it. Like, even if it blows up, then it blows up. But these are the things that are important to me. So, if you're open to share, of course, like, what did you notice health wise? Because you said stress really leaves a mark on the body.
For
What was
sure.
it for you? What would you like other women to warn about? What they be on the lookout for?
Absolutely. Well, the first signs for me was how much weight I was gaining. I didn't really change my eating habits, but I just year after year for a decade just kept putting on weight. And so it was very obvious that some things needed to change. But beyond just the scale, I ended up needing a total hip replacement at the age of 49. So
No.
pretty young because of the extra weight and the wear on my joints and not moving as much, sitting too much, all of that combined. I was forced to recover for at least 6 weeks at home. I couldn't, go into the office and work. And that was a really, eye-opening time for me because my doctor warned me, "If you don't wanna have to have your other hip replaced too,
Mm,
you don't want it to go through all this again, you need to take better care of yourself." And then the pre surgery blood work showed my cholesterol was too high, my triglycerides was too high, and there was something going on with my heart that they couldn't quite identify, but I was still safe for surgery. So let's focus on that later. Entering this weight loss program with this doctor, we did much more extensive blood work and really told the story of you've been in perimenopause for the last 5 years and you probably didn't know that that's what was going on. Your sleep is total garbage and sleep affects everything in your life. But in order to get your sleep under control, we need to also fix all these other areas, including your stress, including your hormones, including a proper diet. And so all of these things were intertwined. They all affected each other, and it was becoming a vicious kind of cycle. I think the last straw for me was I did meet with a cardiologist to kind of explore that heart thing. And after a few ECGs and wearing a heart monitor for a set amount of time, we determined that although there's nothing physically wrong with my heart, what I didn't understand is being under stress for long periods of time can actually affect organs in your body, your brain, and your heart. It could actually cause damage. And I had no idea. Being a mom, stress was normal for me. It was part of my corporate career, right? So you think there's nothing you can do to fix it until you're forced to fix it. Even after a year of, I've lost over 30 pounds. I've got 30 more to go, but I'm feeling pretty good. I've completely
Well
healed
done.
from my surgery. Yeah. I fixed my sleep. I have a CPAP machine. I'm on hormone replacement therapy, so starting to fix these things. But my heart was not responding as if I had reduced enough stress. And so
Mhm.
this last appointment in the cardiologist's office this summer, he just kind of looked at me and said, "Look, if you've reduced stress in every other area of your life, but your career is causing it, you might need to make some hard decisions." And so that was kind
Literal
of
hard decisions.
absolutely, yeah, and there's when you're it's put very bluntly to you by a professional like that, a specialist, you kind of have to realize, "I cannot keep ignoring this, and maybe my career is incompatible with my health."
Yeah, and isn't it harsh that we sometimes need like an external neutral person to give us the real truth and just say, you know what, if you keep this up, you're gonna die. And you're like, okay, that means I'm gonna change things.
Absolutely. Well, and how much of the time are we as women, kind of asked, made to question ourselves? Am I being too dramatic here? Am I being too emotional? Am I being too whatever? One of the great things about having 52 years of life experiences, you start to not care what other people think. And you realize that you can do what you want and not do what you don't want. And that has been a big eye opener for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I recognize so much from what you're saying. I'm actually going through it myself right now as well, where I last year had the same like triglycerides were way up too high and my body is just no. It's it's not doing what I want it to do.
Yeah.
And just today, like literally this morning, I had a wonderful exam where they looked at my ovaries to see if maybe I have PCOS
Hmm.
because my ovulations are excruciatingly painful. And the doctor came in. She saw the like what my doctor had ordered for the exam, and she was like, "Is your cycle on?" Sorry, I did this whole conversation in French, so I have to translate it now. Like, is your cycle regular? Do you have kids? I was like, yeah, I have 2 kids. And she was like, okay, so you have kids and your cycles are regular. It's impossible for you to have PCOS because then this would be off. I was like, you literally haven't looked at my body yet and you've already made your decision. Like, thank you for that. Uh, and luckily, nothing is wrong. Like, everything looks normal. I started this supplement 2 months ago, and after I started taking it, my ovulations became less painful. And then I got this exam today with the doctor saying that, and then eventually the conclusion, everything looks good. So I was like, okay, that's nice. And I immediately started doubting myself. I was just like, am I being dramatic? Like, is it not that painful? Like, if everything's normal, how can it be? Was it even that painful? And then I looked back only 3 months ago, where my husband actually was getting to the point of getting me ready to go to the hospital because my ovulation was so painful that I was just like, with every step, I was cramping and I was just sitting there going, oh my God, like I was in labor. And he just said, this is not normal. And I called a friend and she was like, that is not normal. And I was like, yeah, but it's fine. It's always like this. And she said, no, it's not fine. Like, women are so often taught to believe that it's pain in the whole hormones and reproduction area, and it's like, it's supposed to hurt sometimes. And she was like, no, it's not fine. And my husband was like, no, it's not fine. And here I am only 3 months later, doubting, still again doubting myself, like, am I being dramatic here? But my OBGYN, she said, luckily everything looks fine, which means it's probably stress related. I was like, ah, there we go. Same thing as you're describing, only for you it was your heart. And for me, it's apparently my ovaries who are acting up out of stress. And I think that's just so, oh, it's as you say, the body is so very often telling us that something is wrong. And here we are, women who are just being told, like, it's either normal, you should just push through it, just take some painkillers and you'll be fine. And it's yeah, it's so weird how it works and weird how the system works as well.
I think the system, of course, is a big part of the problem. What's
Yeah.
interesting is I've been to doctors in the past, especially to address, my weight loss issues and so on and so forth. But at the time, they made me feel so guilty because the
Mm,
advice was just exercise more, just eat less. And if those things were just that simple, we would all be able to do them. And yet, so
exactly.
many of us are suffering because it's more complicated than that. Our lives are more complicated, as you know. There's a lot of demands on us, and some of them are invisible.
Absolutely. Most of them are invisible, I dare to say.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. And so, if you don't have the right doctor, one who'll listen to you and believe you and advise you, that can get in the way of finding answers and solutions to the problems that are plaguing you.
Yeah.
Having the right doctor, a female doctor, didn't hurt. An endocrinologist was great. And then being able to just kind of assemble this team of specialists was really helpful in helping me determine how much of this is me, how much of this is normal. And then the other part of it is, can we even do anything about this? Because we're told,
Mhm.
if you have menstrual issues or ovulation issues or other issues, well, that's just how it is. There's nothing we can do about it. And yet, maybe you just have the wrong professional, one that doesn't understand there are things that you can do to change. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what my OBGYN said when I came to her with this. And she said, how long have you been experiencing this pain? I was like, oh, roughly 3 years. And you're coming to me now? Like, why didn't you come sooner? And I said, well, I talked to a doctor like last year, but I started the conversation off with, I want to lose weight and I'm doing everything I can and it's not moving. And then she got into like preacher mode where she was explaining to me, and I felt so small in that moment. I felt so insignificant. She started explaining to me that I should just consume less calories than I used. And I was like, okay, yeah. Oh, I hadn't tried that yet. Like, oh my God, why do you think I'm here? Like, I've been trying to lose weight for 6 years. Did you not think I tried eating less and exercising more? And, oh, that's the thing. And then what also happens a lot, because you say you had a team of specialists, and that is so, so important to have multiple points of views and to have that support. Because I often feel that women at home, because our husbands' bodies, so talking like hetero normal here, but our husbands' bodies function so differently, wildly differently from ours. I'm stressed, so my husband says, why don't you just sit down? Yes, you are right. I should just sit down more often, absolutely. But just sitting down doesn't necessarily do the trick. Just like when, especially the female entrepreneurs with little children who might still have the nights where the kids are maybe not sleeping through, or like you're experiencing as well, where your hormones just get in the way of good sleep. And then the tiredness just compounds and compounds. And then you have the sweet husband at home who just says, why don't you go to bed early tonight? You're so tired. Why don't you just sleep? Like, that's not gonna fix this problem. Like, a night's sleep is not gonna do it.
Correct.
It's
Yeah. I think that, of course, most of the time they mean well. They want
yeah,
us to be healthy and happy.
absolutely.
One example from my husband as I was trying to lose weight is, well, why don't you just do the intermittent fasting thing that I do? I just don't eat until afternoon and I lose weight. And I said, well, that's great. I'm glad that works for you. When I told that to my dietitian, though, she said, absolutely don't
But
do
no,
that. It turns
don't
out
go there.
women actually need protein within the first hour of waking. If you don't do that, your body's in starvation mode for the rest of the day and will protect every calorie you try to burn. And so the advice needed to be completely opposite for women. And I'd never heard that before. Another thing that my weight loss doctor did for me that no one else has ever done is after kind of the initial interview and asking me about my lifestyle and my history, she looked me in the eye and she said, Jennifer, with everything you have stacked against you, you stood no chance of losing
Yeah,
this weight on your own. I burst out into tears in her
I can
office because I
imagine.
actually, felt heard for the first time and not judged. And I realized it wasn't just me being lazy.
Yeah, and I think that lazy is such a key word here for female entrepreneurs who are running a business and running a family at the same time, because so very often we're being made to feel lazy because it's this in the health space, but then there's also that in the business space where we have to take advice from people who have a completely different lifestyle than we have, who maybe not have kids, who maybe are male, and they're just very often like, you just need to work harder and you just need to try this strategy, and why don't you just do that? And you try to do it all, and at the end of the day it's not working, and then you're questioning yourself going, am I lazy? Like, did I not work hard enough? Like, no, that's not it at all.
Not at all.
No. So what, coming back to what you've seen your colleagues do for such a long time, when it comes to productivity, they are making a lot of decisions. They're getting a lot done also because they have the team. But what are some things do you think that we can borrow from them? And what are some things that are absolutely toxic and that we should leave far away from our personal businesses as women who have their own business?
Absolutely. I think the first thing that I left behind was hustle culture that
Um,
I was raised by parents who meant very well, and they were very hard workers themselves. But I was taught if you work harder than everyone else, work longer, and be loyal to your company, no matter what, you'll be rewarded. And that turned out to not be the case. But also that there's a myth out there that women should be able to do it all. You should be able to raise children and work full time and have a beautifully kept home. That is not even possible. So we bought that myth and then measured ourselves against that, compared, and found ourselves lacking and couldn't figure out why. And so the result of that is just work harder, which caused more stress, which made the problem worse, right? Another thing that I've seen, of course, is, like we talked about setting those boundaries. Not everyone can have an executive assistant, of course, but you can be your own executive assistant by employing some of the same tools and tips we do to help manage their lives and gatekeep and make things easier for them are things we can do. And I think probably the last thing I would focus on is understanding how different all of us are. We have totally different circumstances, different backgrounds, we have different influences and stresses. And so you really do need to customize systems and solutions to fit you and not just try to take the generic advice that you can Google. Anyone can tell you can ask AI what to do, but unless
exactly.
they understand all of your circumstances, it's not going to be helpful.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're preaching to the choir. That's exactly my niche as well. Like, you have to completely know yourself, how you're wired in order to make it work for you, because what works for me won't work for you and the other way around. It's there's so much external noise that it's so easy to you try to implement it all and then somehow it's not working. That's, for me, that's one of the reasons actually why I pivoted from being a VA to being a coach, because I got so tired of trying to help people optimize and streamline their business because they wanted to work more efficient and they wanted to save time and they wanted it all, but they were focused so much just on like the digital systems that they completely overlooked the fact that they as a human were there as well. And that I had one client who she switched from Trello to Asana to Monday to Notion. Every time she was like, "Oh, I found this new productivity tool and we're going to implement it and then it's going to work." It's never going to work if you try to match a system that doesn't match your brain to your business. Like that's it will never work. And I got so frustrated by just looking at all these people trying these different things. I was like, I want to help them, but I want to help them on a deeper level. So I started coaching them because I was like, I can help you, but you need to want to be helped and not just keep trying all these systems. You are also neurodivergent and you have neurodivergent kids. How does that tie into everything?
Yeah, absolutely. Makes it just adds a layer of complexity
Hmm.
that not everyone else has to deal with. Really, it all started for me when my oldest daughter was diagnosed with autism, and so being her mom, I started diving into the research and all of the information and trying
Of
to get
course.
advice on how best to support her. And I learned all about this term, executive function, and what that means, and didn't realize that all these years as an executive assistant, I have been helping by use of understanding executive function and helping those skills. That was part of the success. I just didn't have a term for it. And so now I knew it and could look more into it. As we're looking into solutions and strategies for her, I'm recognizing I have these same problems. She probably gets it from me. Hello. And then my youngest daughter as well is showing signs of ADHD and being easily overwhelmed by things and having problems with task initiation and getting started. And then through the middle of all of this, my husband has been diagnosed with ADHD as well. So the whole family is dealing with
Yeah.
separate issues. But it's really been eye opening to learn more about what executive function is. And then the fact that there are all sorts of strategies and tools you can put in place depending on what your strengths and your weaknesses are. It's easy to get overwhelmed by all of that. And I think that the overwhelm, you mentioned it as well, just having so much going on that you can't focus. And this is something that kind of sets apart a successful executive. In my experience, they have absolute crystal clarity on what they're trying to do, what's important to them, and then how to proceed from there. It's very hard to achieve that crystal clarity when you have just too much going on. And so, certainly, we have to take into consideration on a daily basis our neurospicy, we call them, challenges, what the correct solution is depending on what's going on that day, and then just respecting that we all have different needs.
Is there something special or specific you do to define what's most important for you as a person, but also for you as a family?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, part of kind of the start of this journey, I mentioned last November, I sat down and made some decisions and some planning and some goals, and that really helped kind of achieve that clarity. But the very first step in that process that I learned from another podcast that I was listening to is really identifying what are your values. And the exercise they had us do is they had a list of 300 words that all identified different values. And they were very nuanced. A lot of words sounded similar, but they really had different definitions. And the exercise was to go through this list and start crossing out the ones that are not important to you, but narrowing it down to just five or six maximum, four or five values that are really important to you in your life. And once you know what those are, you can actually take a look at what you're doing and your goals and ask yourself, does this align with my values? Is this going to move me closer to it? Or is it going to be in the way? Or is it something neutral? And this is a great way to achieve clarity and to reduce overwhelm is to start eliminating, reducing, kind of decluttering your mind. And that helps you get clearer and clearer. So knowing what your values are, aligning your goals to those values. And then that lets you start to break things down into steps, doable steps was kind of my process. And we do that at home. When one of us is having a struggle, we stop and ask, whatever's going on, is this align with who you want to be, what you're trying to do? Is this important to you? If it's not, let's just get rid of it. So it's no longer an issue if we can. It's not always possible. And then let's work with whatever your limitations are, your strengths are to get you closer to that.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I love that you mentioned the values. It's something I do with coaching clients as well. Like in either the first or the second session I'll have with them, we'll do some exercises to really get clear like the two or three most important values that they are working towards. Because when you as you said, when you align your goals to those values, it's actually proven that people who align their goals with their personal interests and their values, they not necessarily have a bigger chance of achieving them, but they do have a longer persistence. They have like more stamina. They will put in more work towards the goal, and that of course eventually leads to a bigger chance of actually achieving the goal. But I loved how the research really showed that sort of the middle part where you're defining the goal and you're achieving the goal, that's usually what we're looking at. Like I'm here now and I want to go there. And so many people keep their eyes just on the there, but there's this whole middle part where you actually have to work towards the goal. And so they've proven in this research that when you align your goals to these values, the middle part is going to be easier for you to go through, which in the end makes it easier to get those goals. So I really love that you do that at home as well. I think it's so very important.
Absolutely. And it's that messy middle, isn't it, that trips a lot
Yeah.
of people up. They spend a lot of time focused on what they wanna do, and they know where they're starting, but they have no idea how to get there. And I think the other thing they forget is there are different ways to get there, so pick a way that aligns with who you wanna show up as every day. There's a right way to do things, a wrong way. There's this big gray area in the middle. I think they forget to enjoy the journey too. They're so
Yes.
focused on the end destination. Have fun and joy and ease along the way if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes it so much easier and just fun because then it's I recently heard someone say there are so many people out there who have a problem with the word balance. I like the word balance because it's, as I already said to you, I speak three languages on a daily basis. So I have to be quick in what words I use. And I can't just go for work life integration. That's such a mouthful. I like balance because it is a balance. Everything is a balance. And they said, no, the word balance actually implies that one of the things that you're doing you're not actually enjoying. So that's why you sort of feel the need to balance it out with something that's fun. So if you're not having fun in your family, then you try to balance it out in your business and etc. And I realized that maybe that's why I don't have a problem with the word balance because everything I do is fun. Like what else is the meaning of life if you're not making everything you do as enjoyable as possible for yourself? It's your life. You get to live this life once. Make it fun. As you say, enjoy the messy middle, enjoying getting there because what's the purpose if not that?
For sure. I love that you don't think balance is a bad word either. In fact, in my short list of 5 or 6 values, balance turned out to be one of my highest values, and I kind
Oh,
of never
really?
thought of it before. The other
Oh,
thing
that's
about
fun.
balance is it doesn't look the same for everyone. It also doesn't mean 50-50. So you don't have to give 50% of your attention to your work and then 50% to your personal or your home. It can look like whatever needs the most attention at that time, go ahead and focus on and let other things slide, and then you'll be able to shift your attention back when you've kind of achieved balance. Balance can look more like a seesaw rather than a level playing field too.
Yeah, exactly. I always describe it as being a rope walker. Like you're going from A to B, you're walking on this rope, and sometimes you can walk faster, and sometimes you just need to, regain your balance. And especially if you have one of those balancing sticks with like spinning plates at the end, it just gets easier once you take some of the plates off. And if you tie some of the plates down, everything for you to get from A to B becomes easier because, the things that can change along the way, if you make them more predictable, it's so much easier to keep your balance. And it's not a static point in time where you're like, oh, I have to balance everything from here. Like, no, you're on a journey. Sometimes you'll fall a bit more to the right and sometimes you fall a bit more to the left. That's fine. As you say, it's not 50-50. So, what are you helping others with right now? Because you are now full on in your own business. What can people search you for? Like, what do you help them with?
Absolutely. One of the things that I provide is a free resource that you can download from my website, but it's a executive function self assessment because I think that not only do a lot of people not know what executive function is, it's kind of the command center of your brain that allows you to actually function and do things. But there are so many different layers to it and parts of it. And a lot of people just don't know. I don't even know what my problem is what I commonly hear from people that I'm coaching is I don't even know where to start. I don't know what my strengths are. I don't know what my weaknesses are. And so I just come up with a little short survey that you can take at home by yourself in the privacy um, that will tell you based on the scoring system what are your executive function strengths and then what are the areas that you need the most help on. And once you know those things, we can decide what to do next, whether that's all you needed was this answer and now you can go do your own research and figure it out, or do you need a little more coaching and a few more resources, and in which case I'm certainly helping them with that. Right now, I'm working on helping people with kind of the end of the year. When we come to December, they're already thinking about goals for 2026 and how to start the
Yeah.
new year off right. And so I'm doing a lot of work to help people kind of figure out how do you evaluate how this year has been for you, what has worked, what didn't work, what would you like to improve, and then starting to work on those goals for 2026. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's really nice. And you said this is on your website. What's your website? And is there a social media platform you'd like people to hop over to and come say hi?
Absolutely. I'm really easy to find. I try to kind of be all over the internet and be accessible. It's just jfriedmanfast.com. And if you go there, I've got a link tree that kind of lists all of my links, everything that I'm offering. So it's real easy to find. You can also find me on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Most of my things are It's Jenn Fast, or you can search for Productive AF and find me. I would love
Yeah.
that.
And then we have Jen with double N. You write it, I think, from the top of my mind.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct? Yes. So it's Jen Fast with double N. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Jen, for coming on the show and talking about this and opening up about all your personal struggles as well, because I think that that's where the real value lies for my audience is seeing someone else as well. As you said, when you sat in your doctor's office and you broke down, it's sometimes you can do all you want, but it's just not working because it's not you. It's actually external factors out there. And I think that's so important to hear for many women because we tend to be so hard on ourselves from time to time, maybe all the time. So thank you for sharing that. I have one last question for you before we round it off. Something I ask all my guests, and it is if tomorrow you had zero responsibilities, but like zero. The kids took care of themselves and you didn't think about money and you didn't think about your business, like zero responsibilities. Everything was taken care of. What would you be doing?
That's a great question, and I've actually thought about it a lot in my daydreams, like, "If I had a day to myself, what would I do? And I don't have any responsibilities." I would probably spend it writing. I love to write, and I
Oh,
love to kind of tell stories and share, especially life experiences, and I try to do that with online education now. That's probably how I'd spend the day. Absolutely.
lovely. And where would it be? Would you go into the mountains and sit in a cabin or would you just stay home or where would
I
you go?
love I love home. I'm an extreme introvert, and I thrived in pandemic conditions because I
Mm,
love to be at home. But if my home were somewhere closer to the beach and the waves and the sun, that would be great.
yeah. Yeah, I hear that. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Jen. And I hope people go search out, especially your free resource, because that sounds like something that's very valuable to know.
Thank
So
you so
thank you
much
very
for
much.
listening to Not
Thank
That
you. It
Kind
was
of
a pleasure.
CEO.
I appreciate the
If this
opportunity.
episode gave you clarity, encouragement, or just even a moment to breathe, I'd love it if you left a review. It helps more women like you find this show, and that means the world to me. And if you're ready to build a business that fits your life, you know where to find me. See you in the next episode.